What's up guys, Manny from Motomillion. In this video today, I'm going to talk about Panigale V4 versus Streetfighter V4. And I'm going to talk about my personal opinions and the opinions I've formed over the years of having the privilege to be around these things since their inception in 2018 with the Panigale V4, which was Ducati's new V4 platform that came out for the superbikes. And let's get to it. What are the main differences? The most notable difference, I'm going to start off with the ergonomics, is the ergonomics of the Streetfighter V4 versus the Panigale V4. On the Panigale V4, you're riding a little more lean forward because it is a super bike, and in this bike, because of the risers and a slight difference in the seats, and you're more seated upright, this is a hyper naked bike, guys, and that's what that seating position is meant for. And what is a hyper naked, you're probably asking? I think a hyper naked bike is a super bike that is naked, right? So you take your super bike, you take the fairings off, you make it a little more comfortable with your risers and your seating position, and that's what you have. Before the Streetfighter V4, it was the Aprilia Tuono V4 that was out there. That was the undisputed king of hyper nakeds. I think the Streetfighter V4 made him obsolete just because the platform on these bikes has been so successful and so reliable, which was anti-Ducati, right? Because when you thought Ducatis they were not really known for their reliability, but I think these machines have come a long way. But in terms of ergonomics, I think the seating position of this bike is a lot more comfortable. We'll go into the riding details where I tell you guys what happens when you sit upright or lean forward. But again, my opinions are formed, and I'm giving you my opinions on street riding these things. I'm no pro rider. In the hands of a mere mortal like me and most of us, both these bikes are very capable on track, and you're probably going to be as fast with one or the other, and that's no doubt because the electronics are very similar, the power is very similar, but we'll get to that. One other thing about the ergonomics is, which might come to a surprise to you, this bike is a little less comfortable than the Panigale V4 in the situation where it's a high wind event. What am I talking about? Not that if it's windy outside, but if you get on a highway, you're not shielded from the wind at all on this thing. The Panigale V4 is a little more comfortable. I don't think you guys are going to go on a long highway journey with these bikes. I don't think most of us who have any of these bikes do that, but I've seen some crazy people that'll take a super bike cross country. If you do that, I commend you guys for that, because hey, who am I to say that you shouldn't do that? I'm sure there's a good reason behind it, or you want to bond with your machine, or you just want to do it. But in terms of most of us who ride these things, if you're quickly going on a highway for half an hour, maybe an hour as well, the Panigale V4 by far right away is more comfortable, even on a 2-minute highway ride, because this thing does not shield you on there. And what is that ergonomics also of the standing up and the rake of this bike do? This makes the Streetfighter V4 a lot more maneuverable. So if you're on the street and you have to go across obstacles in an urban setting, maybe you're going around cars, if you're turning into a street or a tight corner, this thing is definitely more maneuverable than a super bike. I think it's the rake of these bikes that dictate how maneuverable they are. If you ride them one back to another, you really realize that this thing is a lot more flickable on those slow corners. And that's why, if you guys follow the Pikes Peak challenge, Ducati has never taken a super bike there, because some of those corners, most of them are hairpins, and they want something that tips in for those hairpin corners. They've used multistradas before, and once the Streetfighter V4 came out, they did use the Streetfighter V4 for the Pikes Peak series. And let's talk about power, guys. They're both extremely powerful machines, because this has that 1103cc engine that this bike has as well. And I think the new Panigale V4, what do I mean by the new Panigale V4, the updated 2022 models, are the fastest super bikes that you could buy out of the box. And there is no comparison, I think, in terms of the power for anything else that's out there if you're achieving or trying to see the peak power or what you get in terms of the power on these things. But in a street setting, the power is very comparable, but this bike is tuned to be more in terms of mid-range power, and also I think the gearing has something to do with that. But by no means there is a huge difference between these two bikes. They're both as comfortable on the street in terms of the power delivery that they have, but this kind of is more suited for that slower street riding that you do where you're in the mid-range. But let me tell you this, if you're going to expect this thing to have a lot of low-end torque where it's like at the very low end of that RPM, you might be in for a surprise. These things are not known for that. Even for the power band, when you rev this bike out, the front end starts coming up at 10,000 RPM and above. That's just because of the peaky power nature of this thing, but it definitely has more mid-range than the Panigale V4 if you're looking for that. And let's talk about aftermarket parts, guys, because let's face it, I don't really see any of these things left stock. We all want to tune them, we all want to change them and personalize them. And I'm happy to report that almost everything that fits on a Panigale V4 will fit on a Streetfighter V4. I'm not going to go into detail on what fits and what doesn't fit. Our fitment list is on our website for the parts that we offer. And if you have any questions, one of the Motomillion team members will be more than happy to answer your specific questions. But we do enjoy the aftermarket support that the Panigale V4 has, since there is so much you could do to these things, and most of it transfers over to the Streetfighter V4. And if it doesn't, they do have a lot of Streetfighter V4 specific parts. So if you want to make it your own, the Streetfighter V4 and the Panigale V4 are just as good. And let's jump on to making it your own and making it look better. I think, this is my opinion, the Streetfighter V4 is the better looking of both bikes. They're both amazing looking bikes. I think in terms of super bikes, this is the prettiest bike that's out there. You might not share the same opinion, guys, and that's why it's called an opinion. This is my opinion. There's no right or wrong opinion, I think. But I think, in my eyes, this is the prettiest super bike. But between these two, I opt in for the Streetfighter in terms of the looks, because whenever we take the covers off over here, this thing is a looker, guys, especially in this form of what we've done with this bike. It is an absolutely stunning bike. And I think easily this is the better looking bike of these two. And let's get to the answer of which one do I enjoy the most in terms of the riding of it, in terms of street riding. This is a very hard question to answer because I don't have an answer to this question of this or that. They're both great, and if you want to take this as buyer's advice, or if you're looking for the one or the other, if you're trying to decide between one or the other, and if you stumbled upon this video, I think you should ride both and you should decide. But ultimately, if you're privileged enough to be able to own both of them, I think the experience is completely different. And I don't have a personal favorite when it comes to that. It's the experience that makes it for me in terms of what I pick to ride, since I get to ride both these bikes thanks to being around these bikes so often. And it all really depends on how I feel that day. This bike, in its inherent nature, I think the DNA in it really transfers through. I think it's the seating style that it gives you a little more confidence to be more of a hoonigan on the street, versus the Panigale V4 wants you to kind of respect it a little more. And we're talking about urban riding, guys, because I am your typical Ducati rider that will ride this thing to your local meet or to the coffee shop. Because let's face it, all of us are busy, and when we ride these things, we're looking for that experience or to get away a little bit from our daily lives to de-stress. And that's why it all really depends on which one I feel like. But if it was me, and if I had the privilege being able to own both of these bikes, I would definitely have both of them, because I know the experience you get from them are so different. Yes, they do sound the same, but I'm telling you, the riding experience is totally different. So that was my opinions based on the riding experience. But if I was in a canyon setting, in West Coast US, where you have a lot of canyons, or somewhere in Pennsylvania region where you have a lot of these roads that are tight turns, I think I would definitely opt in for the Streetfighter V4, because this probably doesn't suit that kind of riding that well. And guys, if you have any questions that I haven't answered by you guys watching this video, or if a question came up from watching this video, put it in the comments below, guys. I always check the comments, and I'll try to reply to you with a proper answer, as proper as I could get with that question and answer that you might have from me. But if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Until next time, guys, have a great one.